A week before my stepson's marriage, he told me, the greatest thing would be if you just departed. So I did exactly that. After canceling all payments and withdrawing everything, I moved away. What I left on the table truly destroyed him. Before I tell you how I did exactly that and why it changed everything, do me a small favor. Stay with this story. Leave a comment about where you're watching from, and let these words travel farther than I ever did. I arrived early with the box balanced on my palms, the way you do when you don't want to spill what you're carrying. The bakery had tied it with a thin silver cord. Inside was Evan's favorite, vanilla sponge layered with berry cream, finished clean, nothing flashy. The woman at the counter smiled when I paid. "You must love him," she said. I nodded. It cost more than it should have, and I didn't blink. Big moments deserve care. Evan opened the door like I was a delivery he hadn't ordered. His mouth lifted. His eyes didn't. He didn't look at the cake. He looked at me the way you look at a notification that arrives too early. "Congratulations," I said. "They did it just the way you like." He stepped aside. The house was bright and quiet, the kind of quiet that means someone scrubbed too hard. I'd paid for this place when he married Laura. The wide windows, the pale floors, the island everyone said would change their lives. I remember the cashier's check, my hand shaking as I signed it, telling myself it was a blessing, not a burden. "Put it there," Evan said, pointing to the island. No hug. No thanks. The box felt heavier than when I'd left the bakery. I loosened the cord and cracked the lid to let the cool air in. "I thought we could light candles after dinner," I said. "Grill outside. Make a night of it." "We need to talk before anyone comes," he said. "Of course," I said. "Whatever you want." The house smelled like lemon cleaner and something sharp. I followed him to the living room. He stayed standing. I sat. The silence stretched until it snapped. "I've been thinking about what would make me happy," he said. His voice was calm, practiced. He'd learned that tone over the years, during small disputes that grew teeth. Trips, cars, help that never stayed help. "Tell me," I said. "Say it, and I'll work it out." He met my eyes. Clear, hard. "The one thing I want most," he said slowly, "is for you to just depart." I heard it clean. No mower outside. No dog barking. Just that sentence. Simple as a stamp. "What?" The word came out thin. "I mean it," he said. "I'm exhausted by your calls. Your drop-ins. Your opinions. It would be easier if you were gone." My hands rested on my knees. I watched the tremor start on my thumb and spread. I thought of the cake in the kitchen. The silver cord lying neat on the counter. I thought of working double shifts decades ago, promising myself I'd save, so the kids wouldn't start life already tired. "I called to check on you," I said, "not to control you." "You called to remind me I owe you," he snapped. "You pay for things and hover like a hall monitor." "I keep track because that's how I was trained," I said, "not to hurt you." He sat across from me, crossed one leg over the other. "I want to be happy, Daniel. Happy people don't have a 60-year-old stepdad popping in 3 times a week. Happy people don't get texts at dawn about insurance." "I wake early," I said. "You can answer later or not all." "I don't want you in this house unless you're invited," he said. "I don't want your advice. I don't want to owe you for anything else. Ever." Sunlight cut a pale square across the rug. Dust drifted through it. I wished it were later so I could say the important part was already done. Cake, candles, a decent dinner. I wished I could rewind the drive. "Is this about money?" I asked quietly. "It's not about anything," he said. "I told you what would make me happy. I asked for a wish," I said, "not a sentence." "Don't be dramatic," he said. "I'm not saying do it. I'm saying it would be easier." Laura's car pulled into the driveway. Door shut. Evan stood, smooth as jacket. "Let's not make a scene," he said. "People are coming." "You invited people?" I asked. "Just a few," he said. "It's fine." It wasn't, but I nodded. The door opened. Laura came in with groceries, warm from the sun. She smiled at me, then at Evan, then the smile edged down. "I should go," I said. "You have guests." Evan opened his mouth, then closed it. Laura took the cake to the fridge. The silver cord lay on the counter, like something broken. At the door I paused. I never meant to make you feel managed. I said, I wanted you to feel supported. There's a difference. He didn't answer. His eyes passed over me like furniture. Outside, the afternoon was too bright. I walked to my car the way I learned to walk carrying trays. Deliberate, shoulders level. The drive home was short. I said each step out loud. Signal. Turn. Brake. Park. In my apartment at Maple Court, I sat at the oak table where I pay bills and write lists. The clock ticked. I pulled a clean pad from the drawer and wrote house at the top. Under it, a number. I boxed it. My hand stopped shaking. I didn't keep writing. Not yet. The phone buzzed. A message from Evan. Please don't come back tonight. People are here. Another. We'll talk next week. Don't text Laura. A third. You always blow things up. I typed and deleted 3 replies. Finally, I wrote, okay. I set the phone face down. From the window, I could see the street and the maples shading the sidewalk. I remembered Evan at 12, lining berries in a perfect circle on a cake, tongue between his teeth. Look, he'd said, it's perfect. At 9, I turned on a lamp and pulled the pad back. New page. My name at the top, Daniel Brooks. Call the bank. Ask about shared accounts. Ask what can be separated. Decide what is mine. The words looked strange and private. Near midnight, I made tea and wrote one sentence at the bottom, careful and steady. Tomorrow, I started partying on my terms. That was the moment everything shifted. Morning light hit the oak table like a ruler. I squared the notepad and pulled the old file box from under bed. The one I'd kept for years because letting paper scatter always felt like inviting trouble. I set it beside my chair and opened the lid. Inside were folders fat with time, statements, receipts folded down to squares, letters I'd read once and then saved because something in me said, don't throw this away. I didn't call Evan. I didn't text Laura. This was not a conversation day. This was a work day. I made tea and let it cool while I sorted. Health first. It's how my mind works. I found the pharmacy slip from Winter when Evan had pneumonia and the card machine went down. I remembered standing at the counter still in work clothes, counting bills like it was the most normal thing in the world. I wrote the amount on the pad and underlined it once. Not for spite. For accuracy. I kept going. An old claim ticket for a suit he wore to a formal event years ago. A photo clipped to it. Evan at 17, jaw too sharp for his face, trying to look older than he was. I wrote the cost next to it and felt my knees ache the way they used to after long shifts. School came next. Statements softened from being opened and closed too many times. I wrote totals twice to make sure I wasn't lying to myself. Tuition, books, fees. I didn't dress the numbers up or down. I let them sit. Before college, camps, winter coats, dental work. The years collapsed into nouns on a page. I boxed the total and wrote before college underneath, so the weight sat where it belonged. Wedding. I paused there. I slid out the receipt for the hall, the caterer's invoice, the band deposit. I wrote the total and drew a small line under it. That night had been beautiful. I refused to let cruelty erase that. Housing. I took a breath all the way in. I wrote condo gift and the amount I'd given when Evan married, then down payment for the current house. I remembered touring it, Evan whispering that it felt like too much, me saying, not if we do it right. I believed in doing it right. When I was done, the page held a number that felt like a quiet stone. I ran my finger under it once. I didn't circle it. I didn't need to. My phone buzzed. Evan again. Don't talk to people about last night. Another. You make everything dramatic. I set the phone face down and wrote a word on a sticky note. Respect. I stuck it to the edge of the pad, so I'd see it every time I turned a page. By late afternoon, the table looked like a small office. Folders open. Calculator in use. I prefer the math by hand. I numbered pages in case I needed to show anyone and not fumble. When my stomach reminded me to eat, I toasted bread and stood at the counter, refusing to rush. At 5, I picked up the phone and called the bank. I put it on speaker and set it beside the pad. When a person answered, I straightened like I was giving report. I have a shared savings account, I said. I need to understand what can be separated. The answer was simple and clean. Either owner could close it. I put on my shoes and walked the 3 blocks to the branch. The office smelled like paper and mints. The manager waited while I set my bag on my lap. I want to close the shared account and move the funds into an account in my name, I said. He explained consequences in a careful voice. Late payments elsewhere. Angry calls. I nodded. I understand. He slid forms across the desk. I signed where the arrows pointed. My hand didn't shake. When it was done, he told me the balance. I let the number land. At home, I wrote completed next to line on my pad and drew a firm line under it. The phone lit up immediately. Did you empty the account? The mortgage drafts tomorrow. What are you doing? I typed slowly. I restored emergency funds to my name. The account was for emergencies, not regular bills. We can discuss terms for any future help. Dots blinked. Then nothing. A message from Laura followed. This creates a problem. I felt no heat. I felt a latch click. I'm not making threats, I said aloud to the empty room. I'm making plans. That night, I changed the beneficiary on my policy. It took less time than I expected. I read every line. I signed. The stamp popped like a small gavel. When I got home, a courier envelope leaned against my door. Inside was a letter my attorney had drafted earlier than promised. Dates, amounts, options. No adjectives. Either buy me out by a certain date or list the property. If not, the process would continue without commentary. My phone rang while I read it. Laura. I let it go to voicemail. The next morning, I booked a trip. Not to run, to breathe. A lakeside town. Walking paths. Single room. I packed light and left a letter by the door for pickup. When the courier knocked, I handed it over and watched him scan it. That sound, the beep, felt final. At the airport, my phone pulsed with messages. I turned it face down and opened a small notebook. On the first page, I wrote 3 rules in block letters. No money talk by text. No decisions when ambushed. Answers only to questions asked in good faith. The plane lifted. My shoulders dropped an inch. By the time we landed, I realized something I hadn't expected. I wasn't angry. I was precise. And precision, I was learning, could change everything. The lakeside town met me with quiet competence. Water like a sheet of glass. Stone paths that curve instead of rushed. I checked into the small inn, accepted the key without ceremony, and stood on the narrow balcony long enough to feel my breath settle into my ribs. I unpacked a few things I'd brought, folded the rules card into the notebook, and went downstairs for orientation. There were 12 of us, a guide with a clipboard and a Navy sweater learned names, and asked about knees. Tomorrow's walk would be gentle, he said. Coffee halfway. Afternoon free. I liked that the plan respected limits without turning them into warnings. I stepped outside alone and followed the path along the water. Cyclists passed with soft clicks. A dog ignored a thrown stick in favor of rocks. For 3 full minutes, I didn't think about money. The absence registered the way a pain does when it stops. It wasn't joy. It was oxygen. My phone vibrated once, twice, then went still. I left it in the room. That evening, I ate alone near a window. When the server asked about wine, I said water was enough and meant it. I slept early with the window cracked. The next morning brought clean air and a slow walk along the lake. I fell in beside Ruth, a woman my age with sensible shoes and a habit of counting steps under her breath. She told me about her grandson's science project. I told her about learning to eat a sandwich in 12 minutes. We were careful and ordinary. Back at the inn, a message waited for my attorney. They'd acknowledged receipt of the letter. No response yet. Breathe. Enjoy your walk. At 3, I sat on the balcony and wrote a letter I would never send. I love you without condition, I wrote. I will help you with conditions. That difference is a thin bridge between love and harm. When the words started to sting, I closed the notebook and washed my face. At 4, I met the financial advisor in the lounge. He listened while I summarized without embroidery. The gifts, the house, the letter, the trust. I didn't apologize. I let the sums be sums. You've done disciplined work for other people, he said. Now we do it for you. I want simple, I said. I want safety. I want to sleep. We built a map. Cash for 6 months. Conservative holding for near needs. Modest growth beyond. No heroics. No surprises. When he asked where I flinched, I said urgency. People using urgency as a lever. Then we remove urgency, he said. Automate what should be automated. Remove access where access leads to harm. My phone buzzed on the table. I ignored it. When we finished, he looked at my totals and spoke carefully. If reclaimed assets joined a discipline plan and I kept my spending steady, there was a real path where my position could double in 5 years. Not magic. Discipline. Time. Refusing emergencies that weren't mine. I went very still. He repeated it. Slow. Exact. Boredom feels like safety, I said. He smiled with his eyes. Then you'll do well. That night, messages stacked up like plates when I turned the phone on. Accusations. Predictions. I answered one line and put the phone back in the drawer. Please direct legal questions to counsel. I'm not discussing this by text. At dinner, Ruth sat across from me and said strangers feel safer for the truth. I told her I was learning to stop funding emergencies I didn't create. She nodded as if I'd said something sensible. Midweek, the lender's tone changed. A formal notice. 30 days to cure. Process, not Cliff, my attorney reminded me. Don't be scared into sloppy. The messages shifted. Please. Blame. You did this. Fix it. I wrote the number of missed calls in my notebook because writing keeps panic from growing teeth. I walked, ate, slept. The world did not ask my opinion on its needs. It was a mercy. On the morning the default letter arrived at my apartment back home, a neighbor slid it under my door and sent a photo. I read the paragraphs twice. I answered Evan with the only honesty left to me. No, your choices did. I flew home with the rules copied on a card and the scarf folded in my bag. The apartment smelled exactly like itself. I watered the plant, opened the windows, and set the blue folder on the table like a guest I trusted. The auction date arrived quietly. I didn't go. I walked the park and counted benches. At noon, my attorney called. The sale cleared high enough to cover costs and leave a surplus. Our claim was recognized. Funds would be held and disbursed. 3 mornings later, a moving truck sat on Willowcrest Drive. I saw it by accident and parked across the street. Boxes came down the steps. A toddler cried. Evan stood in the yard with his phone pressed to his ear like a shield. He saw me and walked to the curb. Are you enjoying this? No, I said. I'm here by accident. You could have saved us with one transfer, he said. One is never one. I said. It keeps being thrown. He told me about a new job starting next week. I said I was glad. Work helps. He waited for judgment that didn't come. You won't see the kids, he said. Not today, I said. No contact until papers settle. It's kinder than a fight. I drove away and washed my hand when I got home. Then I wrote a single line. They are moving. I am not. Days turned into a quiet rhythm. The gossip oxygen thinned. One afternoon, a courier knocked with a trustee's letter. The numbers were plain and solid. My recovery cleared with a steadiness that felt earned. When the wire hit my account, I exhaled in a straight line. I sold the small studio I kept out of habit. Photos on Tuesday. Offers by Friday. Close without drama. The proceeds landed neat and final. I added the lines together with a calm hand and wrote the phrase that fit the page in my chest. Almost 300,000. I didn't cheer. I washed my hands. The plan went into place. Cash where it belonged. Bucket seated. Headlines ignored. Boredom hummed like a refrigerator. Easy to forget until the power goes out. Evan's messages softened into reports. Rental found. Schedule set. Used car purchased. I checked each sentence with a small mark in my notebook. Adults making adult decisions. When the pastor asked if I'd meet with him present, I agreed to 1 hour in a public place with rules. No money talk. If it started, I would leave. We met under a fern by a wide window. Evan apologized without decoration. I thanked him. When it was my turn, I said my love wasn't a question, and I was sorry for teaching him that care meant yes. I wasn't sorry for closing taps that drowned us both. We wrote a small treaty on a card. Sundays, 1 hour, public place. No errands. No money talk. If it started, the visit ended. The first Sunday, the twins ran stiff and then loosened to my arms. We played a quiet game. At minute 58, I stood. I'm leaving on time, I said. See you next Sunday. I walked home by the good street with the tall trees. Ordinary mercy everywhere. At my table, I opened the blue folder and didn't need anything from it. My hands didn't reach. I took out the notebook and wrote a page of verbs without numbers. Walk, read, cook, sort, write, rest. I was done departing. I was staying on my terms. The weeks after I stopped bleeding money were quieter than I expected. Not calm, quiet. There's a difference. Calm feels earned. Quiet just means the noise stepped back far enough for you to hear your own breathing. I kept the rules where I could see them. On the wall by the calendar. In the notebook that lived in my jacket pocket. I didn't read them every day. I didn't need to. They work the way guardrails do. You don't stare at them while you drive, but you feel safer knowing they're there. The trustee's paperwork moves slowly, exactly as my attorney said it would. Slow didn't scare me anymore. Slow was honest. Every update was a paragraph, not a threat. Dates, steps, what happens next. Process, not cliff. I learned to love that phrase. When the final confirmation came, funds authorized, distribution scheduled, I read it once and put away. I didn't sit with it. I didn't reread it. I made tea and stood at the window while it cooled. Celebration, I was learning, didn't have to look like fireworks. Sometimes it looked like not flinching when the phone buzzed. Evan tried a few times to slip sideways into old habits. Nothing blatant. Just testing the air. Hey, he wrote one Tuesday afternoon. Do you still have that contact at the bank? We're confused about a fee. I waited until evening. I reread the message. Then I answer with exactly one sentence. I don't advise on finances unless asked in writing with context and expectations. Dots blinked. Stopped. 10 minutes later, another message came. Can you explain how you want that framed? That was new. I smiled once, small. Sure. I wrote purpose, amount, timeline, and what happens if it doesn't work. There were no dots this time. An hour passed. Then 2. The next morning he wrote back. Never mind. We figured it out. I wrote a check mark next to respected no in my notebook and closed it. Laura reached out once, 2. Not about money. About schedules. About whether Sundays still worked if it rained. I said yes. Public places. Library awning. Card games. She thanked me without attaching a request. I noticed that, 2. The second meeting with my financial advisor happened over video. He didn't ask me how I felt. He asked me what had changed. I told him the leaks had stopped. He nodded and adjusted nothing. Then time does its work, he said. Our job is to not interrupt it. I liked that he didn't call it patience. Patience implies waiting for something to happen to you. This felt like standing still on purpose. At church, the whispers thinned and then evaporated. It's hard to gossip when there's no fresh fuel. People get bored. They move on. I sorted pantry boxes with Marilyn on Thursdays. Rice, beans, flour. The work was honest and finite. When a box was empty, it was empty. No one argued with it. One afternoon, a woman I barely knew caught me in the parking lot. You're brave, she said, the way people say things they want to believe about themselves. I could never do what you did. I didn't correct her. I didn't accept it either. I wrote things down. I said, that helped. She blinked, not sure what to do with that answer. I wish her a good day and got in my car. The third Sunday at the park was colder. The twins wore jackets with mismatched zippers. We played a game where you name something you can see, something you can hear, something you can touch. They loved it because it felt like winning without keeping score. Evan sat on the bench and watched, hands wrapped around a paper cup. When the hour ended, I stood like always. Already? When the boys asked. Yes, I said. Leaving on time is part of the game. Evan nodded, almost himself. We'll walk you out, he said. At the corner, he stopped. I enrolled in a night course, he said. Medical billing. It's boring. Boring pays, I said. He huffed a laugh. You keep saying that. Because it's true, I said. I waited. I didn't fill the space. I won't ask you to pay, he said finally. Not a question. A statement. I know, I said. And if you ever do ask, it will be in writing with terms. He nodded again. Yeah. We stood there, both of us learning how to end a conversation without ripping something. Then we went our separate ways. That night, I opened the blue folder and moved another document from open to done. The stack grew thinner. The table looked like a table again. I slept better. Not longer, better. My dreams were unremarkable. Grocery lists, missed buses. Once, a dream about losing my keys that ended with me finding them exactly where they were supposed to be. The publisher sent edits on the manuscript draft. Change names. Shift dates. Protect privacy. Keep dignity. Your restraint is the point, she wrote in the margin. Don't add heat where the power is in the quiet. I took that advice into everything else, too. When Evan texted late one night, 9:37 p.m., not past the line but close, I waited until morning to answer. We can talk Sunday, I wrote. No explanation. No apology. He replied with a thumbs up. I didn't read anything into it. The house on Willow Crest sold again within months. Fresh paint. New family. I drove past once by accident and didn't stop. I didn't need to see it empty or full. It had finished its work in my life. The money settled into its places. 6 months of cash sat untouched. The rest moved with small, predictable motions. I checked statements once a month and closed them. No daily peeking. No doom scrolling. Boredom held. One afternoon, Marilyn handed me a flyer at the pantry. Trip next spring, she said. Nothing strenuous. You'd like it. I might, I said. I didn't commit. I didn't need to decide everything right away anymore. Evan called on a Thursday, not a Sunday. I let it go to voicemail and listened later. No emergency, he said. Just wanted to tell you I passed the first exam. I called him back. Congratulations, I said. I'm proud of you. There was a pause. Then, softer, thanks. That was it. No hook. No ask. We hung up like two adults who trusted the silence to hold. I stood at the window after and noticed the light had shifted. Later in the day than it used to be. Or maybe I was noticing it for the first time. I wrote one more line on the rules card and taped it below the others. End conversations, not boundaries. Then I made dinner. Nothing fancy. Something that didn't leave leftovers because I was learning not to cook for a crowd that wasn't there anymore. The world kept moving. I kept choosing not to chase it. And that, I realized, was the real departure. By the time winter leaned in, the rules no longer felt like rules. They felt like muscle memory. I didn't recite them. I didn't argue with myself about them. I simply moved the way they allowed me to move. Steadier, quieter, with fewer apologies stuck in my throat. The trustee's final disbursement landed on a Tuesday morning. No fireworks. No trumpet. Just a clean line in my account that matched the clean line on the letter. I checked it once, then closed the app and made coffee. I'd learned that staring too long at numbers turns them into dares. I wasn't daring myself anymore. I took the blue folder out and moved the last sleeve from pending to complete. The folder was thin now. It fit easily in the drawer. When I closed it, the sound was soft, like a book you finished and don't need to reopen to remember the ending. Evan didn't call that day. He texted instead. We signed a longer lease. 2 years. The boys like the school. I read it twice. Then I wrote back, that's a solid decision. No exclamation points. No advice. He replied with a single word. Yeah, that word used to make me anxious. It used to feel like a door half shut. Now it felt like a period. A complete thought. Sundays became predictable in the best way. The library awning when it rained. The park bench when it didn't. 1 hour. Snacks I brought. Stories the twins brought. Evan and Laura stayed nearby. Sometimes joining, sometimes not. If money drifted into the air like smoke, I stood up. It happened once. Only once. Evan caught himself mid-sentence and waved it away like he'd said something embarrassing. I sat back down. That was all the correction needed. At the end of January, Laura surprised me by asking for advice. Properly. An email. Clear subject line. Purpose stated. No urgency. She wanted help choosing between 2 health plans offered through her job. I read the email, waited a day, then replied with bullet points. Pros. Cons. What I'd pick and why. No edits after sending. She wrote back, "Thank you. This helped." And nothing else. I put a check mark in the notebook and closed it. The manuscript edits came back again. Fewer notes this time. "Keep the restraint," the editor wrote. "Readers will recognize themselves in the quiet." I changed dates. I shifted details. I protected privacy the way I protected my credit, with intention. Writing felt like sorting boxes at the pantry. You lift, you place, you don't dramatize the weight. You just don't drop it. One afternoon, I caught myself humming while I washed dishes. I stopped mid-note, surprised. I couldn't remember the last time I'd done that without noticing. I finished the song quietly and went back to drying the plates. In February, Evan called on a Saturday. He asked first, "Is now a good time?" "Yes," I said. It was. He told me about work, about a supervisor who noticed his accuracy, about the boys fighting less now that their routines were boring again. He said boring like a compliment. "I think I finally get what you meant," he said. "About boring." I smiled into the phone. "It grows on you." He hesitated. "I said something awful to you," he said. "Not last year. Not back then. Now. Present tense. I don't want to be that person." "I know," I said. "And you're not fixed forever by one good month. You're fixed by repeating it." He laughed once. "You always say things like that." "Then you're used to it," I said. We ended the call without a plan. That mattered. Spring came soft. Not the kind that announces itself. The kind that shows up one warm afternoon and stays. I planted herbs in the window box. Basil, thyme, parsley, plants that forgive you if you miss a day. The financial statements arrived monthly. I opened them. I closed them. I didn't tinker. The plan did what it was supposed to do when I stopped interfering. Time passed. Numbers did what numbers do when you stop pulling at them. At church, Marilyn asked if I'd speak at a small workshop about boundaries. I said no. Then I thought about it. Then I said yes with conditions. No names. No stories that weren't mine. No advice beyond what I could write on one index card. I stood in front of 12 people and said exactly this. Write things down. Decide before you're tired. End conversations, not boundaries. Then I sat down. That was the whole talk. A woman cried anyway. In April, Evan asked if I'd read at the boys' class. 10 minutes. Animal voices. I showed up early and left on time. The fox was polite. The bear was sleepy. The teacher thanked me like I'd done her a favor. I hadn't. I'd kept a promise. On the walk back to car, Evan said, "You don't hover anymore." "I retire from that." I said, "Good," he said. "It's better." I didn't write that down. I didn't need to. The publisher called with a date. Fall release. Pen name confirmed. Clean contracts. No interviews unless I wanted them. I didn't. The book didn't need my face. It had its own spine. One evening, I opened a notebook to a blank page and realized I hadn't written in it for weeks. Not because there was nothing to track, because there was nothing chasing me. I closed it and put it in the drawer without ceremony. In May, I took the trip Marilyn had mentioned months earlier. Nothing strenuous. Bus rides, walking paths, a museum that smelled like old paper and polish. I brought one book and finished it. I brought the rules card and didn't look at it. Evan texted once while I was away. Have a good time. I replied, I am. That was the whole exchange. When I got home, the apartment greeted me like it always had. Quiet, honest. I watered the plant. I checked the mail. A single envelope waited on the table. My author copy. Plain cover. My pen name printed clean. I held it for a minute. Then I set it down and made tea. The final Sunday before summer. The twins asked if I could stay longer. I looked at the time. 59 minutes. One more minute. I said, then I leave. They counted down together. When 0 arrived, I stood. Evan nodded. Laura smiled. The boys hugged my waist and let go. As I walked away, I realized something that felt almost like laughter and almost like grief braided together. I hadn't disappeared. I departed from the role that was killing me. I canceled payments that kept me owned. I withdrawn access that had replaced respect. And in doing that, I hadn't lost my family. I'd finally met them as adults. At home, I opened the window and let the evening in. I wrote one last line on a fresh page, slow and careful, then closed the notebook for good. I didn't die. I stopped paying to be erased. If this story stayed with you, do one small thing. Tap like, subscribe if you want more stories like this, and leave a comment below. Even a single word helps these stories reach the people who need them.